You know, with the world's eyes on the Middle East and Gaza at the moment, maybe we're not looking elsewhere as much as we should. President Zelensky of Ukraine is concerned that his people are being forgotten. Life in Afghanistan continues to evolve, often in unsettling ways. And here's a film about the latter. When the Taliban took control in the 90s, they banned music, dancing, musical equipment even, like cassettes. Afghanistan had been a nation of music lovers. And here's a film produced locally on people who still are. Sisters has been created by Dan Blackwell. Nice to see you, Dan.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me, Bernie.
How come you wanted to create this story? How was the seed planted?
Wow, yeah. It's a strange kind of story of how it happened, really, because I was a musician, born and raised in Northampton. I grew up in East Unsbury. I was taught guitar by a local guy called Chris Startup with his band King's Gambit.
Chris Startup?
Shout out to Chris Startup.
That's the best name ever.
Yeah. Especially for a guitar teacher, isn't it? Yeah, he was brilliant. And I became a session musician, and then I got into production and composition, and I started my own collaboration project called 4-Bar Collective. And it was about bringing people together, different genres, you know, and I'd record 4 bars of music from different musicians, and we'd splice them together into one track so that we could have like 20 musicians on one song, so they could share fan bases and, you know, sharing music, bringing people together, all just positive things. Gotcha. You know what I mean? There's so much like negativity and backbiting in the music industry, and I kind of wanted to get away from that and kind of make my own career path within it that was positive and happy, you know? And then when I was 25, back in 2017, I'm 32 now, I was in a bit of a bad place. I'd been travelling for a little bit, and then I'd kind of come back home. I was in Northampton, and I was suffering with anxiety. I was suffering with depression, and like really in a hole. You know what I mean? I was working as a care worker and just, you know, trying to make as much money as I could to save up, but it's hard work, and you know. And I was on Facebook, and I saw about this orchestra called Zora in Afghanistan, and I didn't know anything about Afghanistan. I didn't know that music was illegal. I didn't know that women could, you know, be threatened with beatings or death or anything just to listen to or play classical music.
And clothing is interesting, because if they just showed an inch of flesh without wearing a full body burqa, then flogging was a possibility.
Absolutely, yeah. And I found out this orchestra of like young women, like the oldest was 20 at the time, and the youngest would have been like 14. You know, they're all sort of between those ages. They've got together at this sort of secret school and formed an all-female orchestra called Zora. And some of them have faced backlash from their families. Some have been rejected by their families. There's been disputes. There have been death threats. There've been all these things, and they've carried on and done it anyway. So it was led by a woman called Nagin, who was the country's first ever female conductor. There'd never been a female conductor before.
Was this in the window between the Taliban? The Taliban came to power and then they fell, and was it in that period?
Yeah, things were kind of getting better, but still, as a society, it was like very, very much frowned upon, very, very dangerous.
Because music was linked to prostitution, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like the way they would perceive music over there it's the same. Like a woman playing the violin to them is the same as getting on the table and dancing for money. You know, like that's how it's perceived. So if they find out, oh, your daughter's doing that, that's the whole family is getting this bad name, and you need to stop her. It's your duty as a father or a brother or uncle or whatever to stop. You know, so I hear stories about some girl's uncle breaking their arm and things like that to stop them playing their viola. And
that's unbelievable, because for us, music for centuries has been a force for good.
Yeah.
And it's a universal thing. So you think it goes all around the world without borders.
Yeah.
And then here's a border.
But music's freedom, isn't it? Music's expression.
But it is to us.
Yeah. But it kind of is universally. So if you suppress that, you can suppress people. If you start letting people create music and express themselves, then you're going to lose control, isn't it? You know, and you're going to lose power. And it's the age-old story of controlling women, isn't it? Yeah. You know, that's what was going on. Like, if you start letting women perform music and express themselves, then they might start getting other ideas about education and all kinds of things.
And that would never do.
That would never do.
So where could they perform? Was it just in-house? Were they in this secret place and not in theatres?
So before I went over and met them, they had just done a world tour. And they'd played at the White House, and they'd played all the most prestigious locations around the world. But within Afghanistan, very private kind of events, government things like that, but not public. Like, they're not playing festivals or anything, or, you know, gig down the pub. They're, you know, it's all very kind of secret kind of thing, because it was so sort of frowned upon to play music. Yeah. So I saw this video about them. It blew my mind, and I composed a piece of music and sent it to Nagin on Facebook. Sent her a message, and I released it as like an open letter, so the music's playing and it's got information on it. I composed this for you, you inspired me, and I'd love to come over to Kabul and record it. And they replied and said they loved it, and they were like, right, well, come over, we'll invite you over.
Now,
So,
you see, that's easy. If someone says, I'm in France, pop over to France, you can organise that.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who's just hopped on a plane and got to Kabul. Easy to do?
No.
You were told by the authorities that if you went, that's up to you. But if you were abducted, there's very little they could do.
They said they weren't obliged to do anything. Yeah. So, because I thought it was obligatory to send them an email to kind of find out, and they said, "Oh, you don't need to do that anymore. We won't do anything.
We don't care."
We don't care. Basically, if we've told you not to go there, so don't. You know, and. You know, usually when people go over and make a documentary in Afghanistan, there's a full crew, there's a whole team organised, a lot of organisation. It was just me at 25 years old. You know, I was living at my parents' house at the time, and I was just like in there, you know, in my little bedroom in there, just on my computer, and just sending emails and getting things booked. And I booked a safe house, which was a weird experience, because, you know, like most hotels, it's like, do you want complimentary towel, do you want a breakfast, this, that and the other. And this one, you had all that, but you also had, do you want a bulletproof vest, do you want a bulletproof car, do you want a GPS tracker on you, do you want a gun, you know?
And that's the reality of day-to-day, or was reality of day-to-day life there then, was it? I mean, one assumes it's very different and not for the better now, but that's how it was then, was it, for everyone?
For everyone, yeah. But I did have a target on my back being there, because at the time in 2017, it was a very tumultuous time going on. We'd just had the explosions go off at the embassies, killed about 80 people, I think. That was within months before I flew over. So everything was really on high alert. And when I got there, people told me just really restrict your movements. Don't go anywhere unless you really have to, you know.
Was there anywhere to go anyway? Were there places open? Was there anything like a social life, a nightlife?
It existed. Yeah, there was a big nightlife out there, all kind of like behind closed doors and secret, and, you know, but there was a whole, I guess, expat community. I did go to one party actually in the Green Zone, and it was all, you know what, I bumped into I think he was a Marine from Dustin.
No, you did not.
Yeah. I was like, what are you doing here?
Mind you, he looked at you and thought exactly the same.
He did.
So how did you find the women? How were they? What was their mood?
They were wonderful. Like, so once, because the school was kind of secret, it was walled off, had armed guards, and they'd go there in secret, they'd get inside and then just totally relax. And it was like any school in the world then. Everybody's running around, because there's kids there, they're getting an education, they're all playing music, they're all, you know, all happy, they're all playing tag, they're playing hide and seek, you know, all the kids and that. All the teenagers are hanging out and chatting. It's all just like, as it would be in an English school, you know. It's like, I recognise it so much. And we just made a really instant connection. I think because most of the time if journalists were coming, documentary makers, they had a whole crew with them, you know, and it's like this operation, this outfit. And then I just went there by myself, and I had a load of cameras, and I'd set them up in the corner, you know, to try and make it look as if I had a camera crew. So I just had them on tripods, and then I'd get back in front and start talking to them again.
But Dan, it's your music. That's your passport. That's what it is. That's your passport. That's what let you in, and that's what allowed them to open their hearts to you, wasn't it? It was this connection with music.
I'm a
and what
musician
were they
first.
playing?
They were playing, so there was the traditional instruments there, like the Afghan rhubarb, which is a lute-like instrument. It's beautiful. There's sitar, a lot of Indian instrumentation. Then also the full Western orchestral. So, you know, I don't think we had any brass, but there was strings, there was piano, marimba, clarinets and woodwinds, you know.
And it was what, classical and folk, was it?
Yeah, classical and Afghan, like traditional music, yeah. And we recorded the piece, and I did interviews with all of them. And then... I went away and came back home with the footage, put it together into a first edit. Then I met up with Tony Klinger, the UK filmmaker. You've had him in here before, and he helped me with the edit to, you know, get it to the next level. I met up with my friend Tom Biggs, who's a producer, and we did the soundtrack together. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then Afghanistan fell 2021,
For the
August
second time.
15th. Yeah, the Taliban took over again.
So the women were obviously there, and you were watching the footage. And if we cast our minds back, we are still struck by the images of those planes with people just clinging, thinking, well, you're never going to get out of there alive, you know. Could you see any of the people that you knew? How long was it until they got in touch with you to say, we're in this part of the world now?
So I was talking to a few of the women that I'd met there who got left behind in Kabul for a while, and it was pretty desperate, to be honest, the text messages and things I was getting from them, because we were just chatting every day on Facebook.
Was it an overnight change, Dan? Because we were led to believe by the Taliban that they were going to be more liberal this time and they weren't going to make these swinging changes like that.
I believe it was done gradually, but I think everybody knew the score straight away.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was worried. And I was getting messages. One woman messaged me who was an artist, and she was saying that all her art had been burnt and they'd all smashed up, and she showed me photos of it. And the school that I filmed the orchestra at, that's a Taliban headquarters now, I believe. That was taken over and all the instruments were smashed up there. And yeah, everybody had to go into hiding because, of course, all these women in this orchestra now are essentially famous. Like, their faces have been over the internet, you know, not from my documentary because that hadn't been released, but from other journalists coming over and all these things.
So how did they get out?
So they went through different organisations. Some of them it was people they knew, you know, because I was unable to do very much, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have any great sum of money to send anybody or anything like that. So I would just pass it on to anybody that I thought may help, and then they maybe pass it on. And some got linked up with other filmmakers or humanitarians who were able to get them on a military plane and get them out.
Because I don't know how the borders are, but they closed so no one could travel. Is that what happened? They were closed, and so anyone who was in Afghanistan effectively stayed in Afghanistan. You can't have free travel.
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah. Not like you're not allowed to. People did, but yeah, Nagin managed to escape on a military plane through a contact.
How big's the orchestra?
There was, I want to say around 25.
Okay, and
Yeah.
all 25
Yeah.
are now out
Yeah,
around the world,
around the world.
now playing music?
Yes, but everybody's kind of separated, and there's a bit of a Great Depression going on, really, because, you know, can you imagine what it'd be like if you were forced from your country and sent to some random corner of the world, and your mum's in one country, your best friend's in another? Like, it's crazy. I recently came up with an idea to form a remote orchestra called the Afghanistan Free Harmonic Orchestra, and I've been collaborating with Afghan musicians. I partnered up with my friend who was in Kabul at the time. He was still putting out music after the takeover. Guts on him. He's amazing.
Because you can't even broadcast it, can you? You can't broadcast music on radio.
No.
I wouldn't have the lunchtime show over there, would I, on
No.
Kabul FM?
No, they'd come and burn this place to the ground in a second. Yeah. It's intense, and so we're trying to collaborate using the same kind of setup I had for 4 Bar Collective, where I try and collaborate people remotely and stuff, and but do it with Afghan musicians and musicians from other nationalities who want to support them. So we have a couple of members from Zora who I met over there in that orchestra now. We're still sort of growing, and I was in Massachusetts the other week, and I met up with some of the members of Zora and actually had to sit down and got to catch up with them. And
All of this is a long way from East Hunsbury, Dan. It's all a long way from the Tesco that's right on your doorstep. I don't know why you weren't content with that. I really don't. You've done a lovely, lovely thing. It's a fascinating project that you've put together, and people can find it. It's on Amazon Prime, yeah?
you can stream it now in the US and in the UK on Amazon Prime, Google Play, YouTube Rental, and Microsoft.
It's amazing. It's called Sisters. If you go on the website, it's sistersfilm.co.uk, and Sisters is available on all those sites, as Dan says. So next, can you all play together? I mean, is that, you're doing it remotely at the moment, is there this flame flickering in the back of your mind to maybe organise a gig?
That's the ambition.
Somewhere, pull them all together?
Pull everybody together, and perform a big gig, because we actually met up and played a few gigs in Massachusetts, like some free concerts around Harvard and MIT.
Never mind that, you've got the Abbey Centre at East Hunsbury. Bring them all over.
Bring them all here, yeah.
No, but a big gig, do you know what I mean? Somewhere like
massive
that,
concert.
or Festival Hall, or Albert Hall, or something like that.
It'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah, that's the ambition.
Because that's then the spirit of hope, isn't it? That's like a flame burning for people to see.
Exactly, because people are still going, they're still performing music, and they're getting their instruments, and and coming back together again.
Well, it's an amazing thing. Sistersfilm.co.uk. Look on Amazon Prime and all those things that Dan said that I don't understand for a second. You're looking for Sisters, the work of Dan Blackwell. Nice to see you, Dan.
Thank you.